Hannah walked quietly through the broken remains of the old human colony, her small feet making soft sounds on the dusty ground. She was only a child, but she moved like someone who had already lived too many years. The raid that destroyed her home had taken everything from her, and now she lived alone in the forgotten corner of a remote planet. She did not cry anymore. She had cried all her tears long ago. Now she only survived. Food was always a problem, but she knew how to find berries, dig for roots, and catch small creatures. She had learned to avoid the dangerous parts of the mountains and to hide whenever she heard engines in the sky. Pirates sometimes returned to search for anything left behind. Hannah always stayed out of sight. One cold morning, as the wind pushed dust around the ruined buildings, Hannah heard a strange noise. It was soft, almost like a heartbeat or a weak tapping. She followed the sound to a half-collapsed storage room. Inside, hidden under broken metal, she saw a faint blue glow. Her heart beat faster, but she stepped closer. There, resting in a nest of twisted wires and cracked containers, was an egg. Not a normal egg. It was large, smooth, and bright with shifting patterns of silver and blue. Hannah had never seen anything like it before. She touched it with her fingertips, and it felt warm. She knew stories. Everyone knew the old stories of dragons, ancient creatures from distant stars, feared by many, respected by a few. They were powerful, rare, and sometimes dangerous. But Hannah did not feel fear. She felt something else, a strange pull in her chest, as if the egg was calling to her. She looked around the broken room, then gently lifted the egg. It was heavy, but she could carry it. She brought it back to her small shelter in the mountains. She wrapped it in soft cloth and kept it close to the small fire she made each night. Sometimes it glowed brighter, sometimes it lay still. Hannah talked to it during lonely evenings. She told the egg about her parents, about the colony, about the stars she wanted to see one day. Days passed. One night, as cold winds blew outside, the egg shook suddenly. Hannah sat up straight. The silver-blue lines on the egg moved like living light. A crack formed. She held her breath. Another crack. Then a soft sound, like a small creature trying to breathe for the first time. The egg opened slowly, and a tiny head pushed through. It was a dragon. Its scales were silver, shining in the firelight, and its eyes were bright blue and full of life. It was small, but Hannah could already see the strength inside its thin body. The creature looked at her, blinking softly. Hannah held out her hand. "Hello," she whispered. The little dragon sniffed her fingers, then pressed its head against her palm. A warm feeling spread through her, something she had never felt before. Trust. She gave the dragon a name. "Ryun," she said softly. The dragon chirped, as if accepting it. From that night on, Hannah was no longer alone. She fed Ryun small pieces of food and kept him warm near the fire. He grew quickly, faster than any normal animal. Within weeks, he could walk with confidence, flap his wings, and explore their little cave. He followed Hannah everywhere. His presence made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since before the raid. Ryun was gentle with her but fierce with anything else. When a wild creature tried to sneak into their shelter one night, Ryun stood in front of Hannah and released a warning growl so loud that the creature ran away immediately. Hannah hugged him afterward, thanking him. She felt like she had a family again. But the world outside their shelter was still dangerous. Strange lights sometimes appeared in the sky. Hannah knew what that meant. Pirates were searching the mountains again. They were looking for valuable items, technology, or even rare creatures. If they found Ryun, they would take him or kill him. Hannah refused to let that happen. She kept Ryun hidden during the day and taught him to stay silent when they heard engines or voices in the distance. Ryun seemed to understand. His bright blue eyes always watched her carefully, and he reacted to her emotions as if he could feel them. One afternoon, Hannah went down the hill to look for food. Ryun waited behind her, staying close but hidden. She found some fruits growing on an old vine and reached out to pick them. But before she could take them, she heard voices, human voices. More than one. She froze and dropped to the ground. She crawled behind a large rock and peeked toward the sound. A group of pirates stood near the ruins. They wore heavy jackets and carried weapons. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes, kicked at the dirt and laughed. "We got reports of strange lights up here," he said. "If it's what I think it is, we're going to be rich." Another pirate asked, "You think it's real?" "A dragon." The tall man smirked. "I know what I'm looking for. And I won't leave until I find it." Hannah felt her heartbeat quicken. She slowly backed away, staying low. When she reached Ryun, she touched his head gently. Ryun sensed her fear and nudged her hand softly. They returned to the shelter as quietly as possible. That night, Hannah could not sleep. She sat near the fire, watching Ryun sleep peacefully beside her. She knew the pirates were dangerous. She knew they would come deeper into the mountains. And she knew she could not protect Ryun forever if they stayed. But she also knew one thing. She would do anything to keep him safe. Ryun was not just a dragon. He was her friend, her family, the only living being who had stayed with her after everything. Days went by, and the pirates continued their search. Hannah kept Ryun hidden as best she could, but she felt time was running out. She started gathering supplies, water, dried food, and warm cloth. She did not have a plan yet, but she knew they had to leave soon. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Ryun climbed onto a rock and opened his wings. They were larger now, shining like metal in the fading light. He looked at Hannah with a bright, almost determined gaze. "Maybe you're right, Ryun," she whispered. "Maybe it's time to go." She placed her hand on his warm scales. Ryun leaned into her touch. Hannah didn't know where they would go or what they would face, but she knew they would face it together. In that moment, in the quiet mountain air, Hannah made a promise in her heart, a promise never to leave him, never to abandon him, and never to let anyone hurt him. She didn't know it yet, but this promise would change the fate of the galaxy. Hannah woke before sunrise, as she always did now. She looked at Ryun, who slept peacefully beside her, his wings folded against his body. He was growing fast. Every day he looked stronger, taller, and more confident. His scales had become brighter, and a faint silver glow came from them when he breathed. Hannah felt proud whenever she looked at him, but she also felt fear. The pirates were still somewhere in the mountains, and she knew they would not stop until they found what they were looking for. She packed the last of the food she had gathered the night before. It was not much, but enough to help them travel for a day or two. Ryun lifted his head and yawned softly, showing small sharp teeth. He looked at Hannah with warm blue eyes. "Good morning," Hannah whispered with a small smile. Ryun moved closer and nudged her shoulder gently. They left the shelter soon after. Hannah knew a path through the mountains that led toward the old human military station. It had been abandoned long before she was born, but she remembered seeing its tall towers from far away when the colony was still alive. If they could reach it, they might find tools or supplies to help them stay safe. The path was steep, and Hannah had to be careful not to slip. Ryun walked beside her, sometimes lowering his body to help her climb higher rocks. Even though he was still young, he understood her needs with surprising clarity. Hannah often wondered if dragons could feel emotions the same way humans did, or maybe even stronger. As they walked, Hannah kept listening for engines or voices. The mountains carried sound in strange ways, and sometimes she thought she heard something even when the air was silent. But this time, the danger was real. A sudden echo of footsteps reached them from behind. Hannah froze and grabbed Ryun's front leg gently. They both moved behind a large boulder and waited. The footsteps grew louder. A small group of pirates appeared around the bend. Hannah recognized one of them, a man with a scar across his cheek. She had seen him searching near the ruins days ago. He held a scanner in his hand, and its light blinked red. "We are getting stronger signals," he said to the others. "Whatever we're looking for is close. Keep your eyes open." Hannah's heart pounded. She pressed her body against the rock, hoping the pirates would pass without seeing them. Ryun stayed completely still, but Hannah felt the tension in his muscles. The pirates looked around, pointing their scanner at the rocks and bushes. For a moment, Hannah thought they had been found. But after a few long seconds, the group moved on, disappearing behind another curve in the mountain. Hannah let out a quiet breath. Ryun touched her hand with his nose, comforting her. "We have to move faster," she whispered. They climbed higher through the mountains until they reached a narrow ledge. From there, they could see far across the land, dry valleys, gray cliffs, and broken remains of old human roads. At the center of it all stood the old military station, a tall structure of metal and stone. Time had damaged it, but it still stood strong. Hannah felt hope. If they could reach it, they might find shelter and a place to rest. They reached the station by noon. The door was rusted, and Hannah had to push hard to open it. Inside, the air was stale, but the building was surprisingly intact. Broken screens, old seats, and dusty control panels filled the large room. Ryun walked around, sniffing everything with curiosity. His tail brushed against old metal crates, making soft clinking sounds. Hannah explored the rooms carefully. She found old training modules still attached to the walls. Some were broken, but others seemed usable. She tapped one of the screens, and to her surprise, it flickered faintly. Words appeared on the screen: Tactical Training, Basic Strategy Module. Hannah stared at it. She remembered her father telling her stories about human soldiers and their discipline. This place must have been where they trained long ago. She pressed another button, and the screen brightened a little more. A simple voice spoke from the device: "Welcome to the Basic Strategy Module. Please select a lesson." Hannah felt a strange excitement. She selected the first lesson. The screen showed diagrams and explained simple tactics: how to outmaneuver enemies, how to prepare defenses, how to lead small groups. Hannah watched carefully, reading every word. Ryun settled beside her and rested his head on her lap. She smiled and petted him softly. As the hours passed, Hannah continued learning. The lessons were simple, but she absorbed everything. Strategy, movement planning, survival skills, things she had never known before. It felt like the station itself was teaching her how to protect herself and Ryun. When evening came, Hannah finally stopped. Her mind felt full, but she felt stronger, more prepared. Ryun stood up and stretched. His wings had grown wider, and he practiced flapping them. Sometimes he lifted off the ground for a second or two before landing again. Hannah laughed softly. "You'll fly soon," she said. Ryun chirped happily. As they ate a small meal, Hannah heard a distant sound, an engine, low and strong. She moved to the broken window and looked outside. A pirate ship was flying across the valley. But this one was larger than the ones she had seen before. Its engines were louder, and it carried heavy weapons on its sides. Hannah felt fear grip her chest. Ryun walked to her side and stared at the ship with narrowed eyes. "They're still searching," Hannah whispered. "And I think they brought more people." She watched the ship land on a flat piece of land far below. Dozens of pirates stepped out, and leading them was the tall man she had seen before, the one who spoke about dragons. His name, she remembered hearing, was Dae Young. He stood at the front of the group, his eyes sharp as he looked toward the mountains. "We're close," he said loudly. Even from far away, Hannah could almost hear his voice. "Search every cave, every path. I want the creature alive. And bring the girl too." Hannah stepped back from the window. Her hands were shaking. Ryun let out a low growl. His scales glowed faintly. "I know," Hannah whispered. "We can't hide forever. But we're not ready to fight them. Not yet." She looked around the old station. It was not perfect, but it gave them tools, knowledge, and a place to plan. That night, Hannah and Ryun slept inside one of the old training rooms. The wind outside howled, but inside the station, they felt a little safer. The next morning, Hannah woke with a clear mind. She had made a decision. "We will train," she said quietly. "We will get stronger. And when the time comes, we will fight back." Ryun lifted his head and made a soft sound of agreement. Hannah walked to the training modules again, turning on the screens one by one. She studied movement patterns, defense strategies, and ways to stay unseen. Ryun trained beside her, practicing his jumps, wing flaps, and sharp growls. Weeks passed. Hannah became faster, stronger, and more confident. Ryun learned to glide short distances, and his flames, small at first, became stronger. But Dae-young and his men did not stop searching. Every day they came closer. One afternoon, Hannah stood outside the station, watching Ryun practice flying. He lifted off the ground, wings spreading wide, and stayed in the air for several seconds before landing again. Hannah clapped her hands softly. But then she heard a sound, a loud shout. She turned and saw figures moving up the mountain path. Pirates! They had found the station. Hannah's heart raced. Ryun growled. Hannah and Ryun moved through the rocky valleys for many hours, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the pirates. Hannah's legs ached, and her breath came in short bursts, but she kept moving. She knew Dae-young's men would never give up. They wanted Ryun, and they wanted her. She could not let either happen. Ryun walked beside her, his wings brushing the ground as he moved. He kept looking back, watching for danger. His eyes were sharper now, more alert, and his body had grown strong enough to carry Hannah for a short distance. Sometimes, when the path became too steep or rough, he lowered himself so she could climb onto his back. He would glide down small slopes or jump across wide gaps in the rocks. As the sun began to set, they reached a small, sheltered valley. Hannah looked around and saw no signs of pirates. For the first time in many days, she felt they could rest for a moment. She settled near a large stone and dropped her bag. Ryun curled up beside her and rested his head on her lap. Hannah stroked his scales softly, feeling the warmth beneath them. "We can't keep running forever," she whispered. "We have to find somewhere safe. Somewhere the pirates won't find us." Ryun made a low, gentle sound. It reminded her of a promise, as if he was telling her he was not afraid. That night, the stars shone brightly above them. Hannah stared at them for a long time. She wondered what other planets were out there, what other lives people lived far from this lonely place. Somewhere out there, families were together. She felt a small ache in her chest, but she pushed it away and focused on the warmth of Ryun beside her. When morning came, Hannah woke to the sound of something moving in the bushes. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding. Ryun opened his eyes too and lifted his head. A young man stepped out from behind the bushes. He wore a simple brown jacket and carried a bag on his back. His hair was messy, and he looked tired, but not dangerous. He raised his hands when he saw Hannah and Ryun. "Wait. I'm not a pirate," he said quickly. "I'm not here to hurt you." Hannah remained cautious. She stood slowly and moved slightly in front of Ryun. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Miran," he said. "I'm an engineer. I was traveling through these mountains when I heard voices and engines. I hid and watched. I saw pirates searching everywhere. They said something about a dragon and a girl. I thought maybe you needed help." Hannah looked at him carefully. Ryun growled softly but did not move. If you want help, I can give you some, Miran said. I know machines and old technology. I know how to fix things. I also know a place where we might hide, at least for a little while. Hannah hesitated. She did not trust strangers easily. But Miran did not look like someone who worked with pirates. And she could not survive alone forever. Ryun stepped forward, sniffed the air around Miran, then looked at Hannah. He made a soft sound. He was not sensing danger. Where is this place? Hannah asked. Miran pointed toward the north. There's an old mining camp. It's broken down, but there are buildings still standing. Pirates don't go there because there's nothing valuable left. We can reach it before nightfall. Hannah nodded slowly. Okay. But if you try anything, Ryun will protect us. Miran held up his hands again. I understand. They traveled together through the day. Miran walked with careful steps, always checking the ground and watching the sky. Hannah noticed he was smart, observant, and quiet. He did not ask too many questions about Ryun or where she came from. He only focused on keeping them safe. During the walk, Ryun practiced gliding again. Miran watched with wide eyes. I've never seen anything like him, he said softly. He's my family, Hannah replied. Miran nodded. I can see that. By late afternoon, they reached the old mining camp. It was built inside a deep valley. Rusted machines lay scattered around, and the ground was covered in old tracks from mining vehicles. Several large buildings stood half-broken but still usable. We can rest inside that one, Miran said, pointing to a building with a stable roof. Hannah and Ryun followed him inside. The building was dusty, but safe. There were old beds, tables, and boxes filled with supplies that miners had left behind long ago. Ryun curled up in a corner while Hannah and Miran set up a small fire. They warmed their hands and ate a simple meal. Why were you alone in the mountains? Hannah asked. Miran sighed. I was traveling between colonies to help repair machines. But I heard rumors that pirates were attacking settlements nearby. I tried to avoid them, but I ended up trapped in the mountains. I've been hiding for days. Hannah lowered her eyes. My colony was attacked too. I was alone before I found Ryun. Miran looked at her with surprise but did not ask more. He respected her silence. Later that night, after Miran fell asleep, Hannah walked outside. The sky was dark and calm. She looked at the mountains around them. For the first time since the attack, she felt a small sense of safety. Ryun joined her and rested his head against her shoulder. She smiled and touched his warm scales. We have to get stronger, she whispered. We can't keep running. In the days that followed, Hannah trained every morning. She used old tools and stones to practice her movement and speed. Miran watched sometimes and even gave her advice about balance and timing. Ryun trained too. He flew short distances, soared between rocks, and increased the power of his flame. His wings became wider, his claws sharper, and his strength greater. One day, as they rested near the mining camp entrance, they heard footsteps. Hannah jumped to her feet, ready to defend herself. A man approached. He wore a simple uniform and carried a rifle on his back. But his expression was calm, not aggressive. I'm Sun Wu, he said. A former soldier. I saw smoke and came to check. I'm not with the pirates. Hannah did not believe him immediately. But Miran stepped forward. He's telling the truth. I've seen uniforms like his. They belonged to soldiers who fought against pirates years ago. Sun Wu nodded. The pirates are moving across many systems now. I lost my squad a few months ago. I've been wandering alone since then. But I'm looking for people who want to fight back, not run. Hannah looked at him closely. Something inside her stirred. She had been training, learning, preparing. She didn't want to run forever. "We want to fight too," she said softly. Sunwoo looked at Ryun with wide eyes. "Then maybe you have more strength than you realize." From that day on, Hana, Ryun, Miran, and Sunwoo formed a small group. They trained together, shared food, and taught each other new skills. Sunwoo showed Hana how to hold a weapon safely, how to defend herself, and how to stay calm during danger. Miran repaired old machines and set up alarms around the camp to warn them about intruders. Ryun grew stronger each week. His wings lifted him higher. His flame became brighter. He was no longer a small dragon hiding from the world. He was becoming something powerful. Hana felt her courage growing too. She learned how to plan attacks, how to move through shadows, and how to think like a leader. One morning, as they trained outside, Sunwoo pointed toward the sky. "Look!" A pirate ship was flying toward a nearby settlement. Hana watched with a steady gaze. Something inside her shifted. "We're not hiding anymore," she said. Ryun spread his wings beside her. The journey to the ruined city continued with slow and careful steps as the group moved through the silent valley. The sky above them was bright but cold, and a thin wind passed over the broken stones that marked the path. Rylan walked in front, making sure everyone stayed close. He looked around for danger, because he knew the valley was old and full of strange things. Mira walked behind him, keeping her eyes on the glowing crystal she carried. The light was soft but strong enough to show the way through the shadows between the rocks. Tarek was quiet as he walked. His large alien form moved smoothly, but anyone could see he was tired. He had used a lot of strength during their earlier fight, and now he needed time to recover. Still, he did not rest or slow down. He wanted to protect the others, and he wanted to reach the city. He believed the answers to his people's past were hidden there. Kiro, the small creature with sharp eyes and fast hands, followed at the back of the group. He looked around with interest and curiosity, picking up small stones or touching strange symbols carved on the old walls. The valley grew darker as they approached the ruined city. The walls of the city rose high, broken in many places, but they still showed the shape of a place that was once strong and full of life. Rylan stopped for a moment and looked up at the entrance. The gate was tall and heavy, made of stone that had cracked with age. Moss grew in the lines between the stones, and dust covered the ground. "This place feels strange," Mira whispered. She looked around with wide eyes. The air was still, but something felt like it was watching them. "We must be careful," Rylan said softly. "Stay close and do not touch anything unless we understand what it is." They entered the city through the broken gate. The streets were silent, and the buildings stood like ghosts from a forgotten time. Some walls had fallen. Others were leaning but still standing. The ground was uneven, and plants grew between the stones. The group moved carefully, listening to every small sound around them. Tarek stopped near a tall tower that had lost its top. He placed his hand on the wall, and his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "My people lived here once," he said quietly. "This place was home to my ancestors. They built great cities. They were strong and proud. But now everything is gone." Rylan looked at him with understanding. "We will learn what happened," he said. "That is why we came here." They continued forward until they reached the center of the city. There they found a large open space, like a plaza. In the middle stood an old statue. It showed a tall being with long arms and a noble face. The statue was cracked, but still beautiful. Kiro climbed onto a piece of the broken base and looked at the symbols carved into it. "These symbols match the ones we saw on the way here," Kiro said. "They might show the story of this place." Mira lifted her glowing crystal and held it near the carvings. The light made the symbols shine, and to their surprise, some of the symbols began to glow faintly. The ground below them vibrated slightly. "Be careful," Rylan said, stepping forward. But the glow grew stronger, and soon a soft hum filled the air. The statue's eyes lit up with a faint blue light. Then a strange sound came from below them. The floor moved, and a round platform slowly rose from the ground. Dust fell from the edges, and the group stepped back in surprise. "What is happening?" Mira asked. Her voice shook. Tarek looked calm but focused. "This might be a memory device," he said. "My people used to store knowledge in strange ways. This could show us something important." The platform stopped rising, and a beam of blue light appeared above it. The light changed shape, forming pictures in the air. The group watched in silence as the images moved. They showed a city full of life, with tall towers and bright energy lights. The people walked peacefully, and everything looked beautiful. Then the scene changed. The sky turned dark. A wave of fire and energy swept across the land. The towers fell. The people ran in fear. A huge shape moved in the sky, but the image was blurry, and they could not see what it was. "This is the fall of the city," Tarek said quietly. "This is what destroyed my people." Another image formed. It showed a group of aliens leaving the city in ships. They carried crystals like the one Mira held. They looked sad but determined. They flew into space and disappeared. "So some of your people survived," Rylan said. "Yes," Tarek replied. "They left to find a new home. But I do not know where they went. Maybe we will find clues here." The light changed again. This time, it showed a dark shape, almost like a shadow, spreading across the sky. It looked alive, like it was moving with purpose. The image ended suddenly, and the blue light faded. The platform slowly sank back into the ground. Kiro jumped back as the light disappeared. That shadow looked dangerous. Maybe it still exists. Rylan nodded. "We need to learn more. But we must stay alert. If something destroyed this city, we do not know if it could return." Mira held her crystal close. The crystal reacted to the symbols. "Maybe it can guide us to more answers," she said. Tarek nodded. "There is a library under the city. If it still exists, we may find the full history there." "Then we go there," Rylan said. He looked at the others. "Stay close. This place is more alive than it looks." They moved toward the broken road that led deeper into the city. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of old stone and forgotten memories. The shadows around them seemed to shift as they walked. None of them knew that something else had awakened when the platform rose. In the deepest part of the ruined city, a faint red light began to flicker. Something old had opened its eyes again. The red light in the deep part of the city grew slowly brighter as Rylan and the others made their way toward the underground library. None of them knew what waited below, and the silence around them felt heavier with every step. The path was narrow and covered with broken stones. Old walls leaned inward, making the group move in single file. Mira held her crystal in front of her and watched as it pulsed softly. "This crystal feels warm," she said quietly. "It is reacting to something ahead." Tarek walked behind her, his large frame tense. "If the library still has power, the crystal may be guiding us to it." Kiro walked lightly at the back, jumping over cracks and loose stones. He looked around with nervous eyes. "This place is too quiet," he said. "Even old cities make sounds. But here, nothing moves except us." Rylan kept his hand near his weapon. He did not like the way the shadows stretched across the walls. "Stay focused," he said. "We will reach the library soon. After that, we leave as fast as we can." They reached a broken staircase that led down into a large opening. The air below felt colder. Mira looked at the glowing crystal again, then stepped down carefully. The others followed. The staircase was cracked, and dust fell around them as they moved lower. At the bottom, they found a wide hallway. Old metal lights hung from the ceiling, most of them broken and rusted. But a few glowed faintly, giving off a weak blue light. "The power is still running," Tarek said with surprise. "After so many years, it should not be possible." Rylan looked around. Maybe something kept it alive. Or someone. Kiro shivered. "I hope it's something and not someone." They continued down the hallway until they reached a large door. The door was made of thick metal and covered with strange carvings. Mira held up her crystal, and the crystal suddenly shone brighter. The carvings began to glow. The door slid open slowly with a deep rumble. A wave of cold air rushed out, and the group stepped back. Inside, they saw the library. It was a huge circular room filled with tall shelves made of crystal and metal. Many shelves had collapsed, and some crystals were cracked. But the center of the room was still whole. A round platform stood there, covered with glowing symbols. Tarek walked toward the platform with slow, almost reverent steps. "This was the heart of knowledge for my people," he said. "Everything they knew was stored here." Mira placed her crystal in a small slot on the platform. The platform lit up with a bright blue light. The symbols moved like water, and lines of light spread across the room. Images appeared in the air above the platform, clearer than before. They showed a peaceful time when Tarek's people were strong and advanced. They showed discoveries, science, and long journeys to distant worlds. Then the images changed. They showed the shadow again, but this time clearer. It looked like a living mass of darkness, spreading across the sky like smoke. But inside the darkness, faint red eyes glowed. Tarek stepped closer to the image. "I know this," he said. His voice sounded shaken. "This creature had no name. My people called it the Devourer. It destroyed worlds by feeding on energy. Nothing could stop it." Rylan stared at the image. "Is it still alive?" Tarek nodded slowly. "If the red light is waking again, then yes. The Devourer may have returned." Kiro swallowed hard. "If it destroyed a whole city of your people, what will it do to us?" Before anyone could answer, the room shook. A heavy sound echoed through the hallway behind them. Rylan drew his weapon and turned toward the door. "Something is coming," he said. The ground vibrated again. Dust fell from the ceiling. The blue lights flickered. "We need to take what we can and leave," Rylan said. Tarek stepped forward and placed his large hands on the platform. He closed his eyes. The symbols shifted and wrapped around his fingers. When he pulled his hands away, a small glowing cube formed between his palms. "This holds the knowledge of my people," he said. "It may help us understand how to fight the Devourer." Mira grabbed her crystal. "Let's move." They ran down the hallway, but the shaking grew stronger. A deep roar echoed through the ruins. When they reached the top of the broken staircase, the air felt heavier, almost like something was pressing down on them. Rylan helped Mira climb up quickly. Tarek moved last, his large body making the staircase creak. As they reached the plaza, they saw a dark shape rising from the center of the city. It looked like a cloud of smoke, but its movement was alive. Its red eyes burned like fire in the mist. "The Devourer has awakened," Tarek said. "It's smaller than in the images," Mira said. "It has just awakened," Tarek replied. "It will grow stronger. We must leave before it reaches full power." Rylan guided the group toward the broken gate. "Run," he said. "Do not look back." But the Devourer moved fast. Its dark form spread across the sky, and a wave of pressure hit the group. Mira stumbled, but Rylan caught her. Kiro ran ahead and pointed to a narrow passage between two fallen towers. "This way," he shouted. They squeezed through the passage and climbed over broken stones. The air around them shook with the sound of the Devourer's roar. When they reached the valley outside the city, they stopped to breathe. Tarek looked behind them. The dark shape hovered above the city, but it did not leave. "It is still weak," Tarek said. "It cannot travel far yet. We have time." "Not much," Rylan replied. "We need to warn the galaxy. This creature destroyed your people once. We must not let it happen again." Mira looked at the crystal in her hand. This crystal reacted to everything in the city. Maybe it can guide us to a place where we can learn how to stop it. Tarek held the glowing cube close. "My people once built a weapon to fight the Devourer," he said. "They never finished it. But maybe we can." Rylan nodded. "Then that is our mission. We find the weapon. We finish it. And we stop that thing before the galaxy falls." The group stood together in the valley, watching the dark shape above the ruined city. The wind blew past them, carrying dust and the faint smell of old stone. The Devourer's eyes glowed brighter, and the journey to save the galaxy had only just begun.